Hey guys, this is Sports with Dylan. Today is Black Monday, the day after the NFL regular season concludes. So that means this is also the day when we see a lot of NFL head coaches getting fired. So today I'm going to talk about the head coaches, the assistant coaches, and the GMs that got fired today. Honestly, there wasn't that many, so this shouldn't be a very long video. I'll go from bottom to top. So kicking it off with the one coordinator fired today, that would be the Jaguars defensive coordinator, Mike Caldwell. This one was probably the most surprising one on this list, which is saying something because it wasn't crazy surprising after what happened to the Jaguars. The Jaguars were 8-3. They finished the season 9-8. They should have had an easy win in the playoffs, but they ended up missing it completely. They could have won their division. All they needed to do this past weekend was beat the Titans, and they would have won their division. They would have tied in record-wise with these guys, but they would have won the division because they have the tiebreaker. But they lost to the, at the time, 5-win, now 6-win Tennessee Titans, starting their backup quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. Yeah. So, someone has to get fired, and it's not going to be Doug Peterson, because he's brought them too much success. So, it was going to go down to one of the coordinators. Press Taylor, the offensive coordinator, is well respected enough that I suspect he will probably stick around. It's possible we still see him get fired, but unlikely. Mike Caldwell, though, was not in the same position. After the defense utterly collapsed, then someone had to take the blame, and that turns out to be Mike Caldwell, the defensive coordinator. So, the Jaguars will now be on the hunt for a defensive coordinator. And this will not be the only coordinator fired. Plenty of them are quietly let go, but I make note of the ones where the head coach stays and the coordinator fires. Every head coach that gets fired, the coordinators are likely to go with them eventually, but they don't get announced as fired immediately. On to the head coaches, starting with, there's only two, and I predicted both of them on my video the other day, which you should check out, because I still think it's very relevant, because I talk about coaches that these guys could hire, these teams being. Anyways, Arthur Smith was fired last night. They didn't even wait till Black Monday after a third 7-10 season. Just like I said, I predicted it perfectly. Now, this isn't that much of a surprise. It's not that much to brag about as a prediction because it was pretty obvious. Arthur Smith was not doing well as a coach. First of all, 3 straight 7-10 seasons. At first, 7-10 was a good record. For a rebuilding team, that was better than expected. Then the next season, it's a bit worse, especially after a strong start in the fall, but we can forgive them. They're still a young team. I'm sure this year, they'll have a better record. Nope, they finished with 7-10 again. So, yeah, Arthur Smith lost the job. The other thing, as I mentioned, is he wasn't using his star players, or at least his ones with the most potential, such as Bijan Robinson being the most notable one. But Kyle Pitts wasn't getting many catches either. Drake London was doing all right for himself. And all three of them were top 10 picks within the last 3 years, all offensive weapons. Now, part of this can just be blamed on the quarterback situation. Desmond Ridder sucked. Taylor Heinicke was a slight improvement, but not by much. So the Falcons will definitely be on the hunt for a new quarterback this offseason, in addition to their new head coach. But Arthur Smith has to take the blame. On to the other head coach fired, which I once again completely predicted, Ron Rivera. Once again, not that much of a shocker, so I should probably stop bragging about predicting it, because most people did. The Commanders started off strong. They actually started out 2-0, and they finished 4-13. The Commanders just haven't had much success under him. After their first season, where they won the division, albeit with a 7-9 record in the weakest division we've seen in years, but they still won the division, and they played well enough, I guess. Didn't play great, but they played well enough. Since then, the Commanders just haven't had it. Last year, they actually finished with more wins than when they won the division, funny enough. But they missed the playoffs entirely. And this year, they just got even worse. So it was time for a change. And once again, just like the Falcons, the Commanders will be on the hunt for a new starting quarterback this coming year as well. Unlike the Falcons, though, the Commanders ended up with the second overall pick due to finishing 4-13. Maybe they should give Ron Rivera some credit for that. So that means that they'll be able to easily find their quarterback in the draft. Hopefully it works out. We will see. Honestly, I do quite like Ron Rivera as a guy. I think he's a good person, a great person, in fact, and I think he's a solid coach. So it is too bad to see him go, but it was going to happen regardless. Now, before I move on, I'm going to talk about one last head coach that the news has been a lot around. I talked about in my last video as well, even though, like I said, normally I wouldn't have. Bill Belichick. Nothing on him yet. It sounds like he's talking with the Patriots owner, Robert Kraft, so we will see. Like I said, I don't think he's going to actually get fired. Maybe he'll retire or something. We'll have to see what happens. Maybe he'll want to stay with the team and develop a new quarterback. But so far, developing a quarterback for him hasn't worked, as seen with Mac Jones. So we will have to see what ends up happening to Bill Belichick, but I'm sure we'll find out in the coming days, just not yet. And finally, moving up the list, we have another one, which I didn't talk about in my video because he's a GM, but I still predicted because it was pretty darn obvious. Scott Fitterer, the Panthers GM, has been fired. Not much of a shocker here either. The Panthers GM, Scott Fitterer, just did not do what the Panthers needed to do. They had a fairly solid roster, but he couldn't find a quarterback. He tried his luck with Sam Darnold, and that did not turn out. But I don't blame him for trying his luck with Sam Darnold. You gotta at least give it a shot. Honestly, it didn't hurt anyone. It was one season. Then the next season, they did get unlucky because it was a weak quarterback class. So even though they had, the 6th overall pick, it was such a weak class, it wasn't worth investing in a quarterback there. So instead, they traded away for Baker Mayfield. And yeah, that did not work out for them whatsoever. Baker Mayfield just did not turn out to be their guy. So this year, I'll give him credit. He actually made a push for it, but maybe a bit too much of a push. He traded up with the Chicago Bears to the #1 overall pick, and in exchange for the 2024 first-round pick and DJ Moore, which seems like quite a bit, especially when you look at what happened this season. Bryce Young did not turn out to be the guy that I think they thought they were getting. CJ Stroud turned out to be a superstar. And if you're wondering why I just waved my hand maniacally in front of my face, it's because I'm pointing at the hat, the Houston Texans hat, who drafted CJ Stroud right after. But Bryce Young just hasn't worked out in his rookie season. I'm sure he still has plenty of potential. I'm sure he can become a star someday. But it just did not work out in his rookie season. Meanwhile, the Panthers ended up struggling so much that they ended up with the 1st overall pick, which means that the Bears got the 1st overall pick this year, and DJ Moore, who broke out back into a star after a down season last year in Carolina, and the Panthers' 1st-round pick last year, which was then traded through a couple of teams. But anyways, the Bears ended up getting the 1st overall pick last year, pretty much, in exchange for the 1st overall pick this year, and DJ Moore, and Darnell Wright, who is a solid offensive tackle in his rookie season. Plus, this year's draft class involves Caleb Williams, who is one of the most heralded quarterback prospects we have ever seen. Which means that this Bears team ended up with the better end of the deal, no question, and I think that's mostly what cost Scott Fitterer's job. Hiring Frank Reich didn't help either. This whole Panthers team just struggled so much this year. So they are starting from scratch, getting someone who can truly develop Bryce Young. I'm sure we'll see some more firings tomorrow and in the next week. There's always a couple more that come later, but these are the immediate ones. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys again soon.